Hello, and welcome to another digital lecture for Salt Lake Community College. This lecture will cover section 2.4 for Introduction to Statistics, Simulation Case Studies. There are only a few definitions in this section that you'd like to feel comfortable with, and you may recall them from Chapter 1. The first is the definition of a parameter. A parameter is the true value of interest that describes a population. However, a parameter may be unknown or unknowable if your population is too large, in which case we can estimate the value of a parameter with a statistic. This is a single number computed from sample data that's hopefully representative of your population. Let's practice this idea for a moment. The following example gives 4 scenarios. In each, a value is given or described. We would like to determine if that value is a statistic or a parameter. Let's try the first one together. A random sample of Salt Lake Community College students were asked if they owned a vehicle, and 83% of them reported that they did. Would this value of 83% be a statistic or a parameter? Because we are told that this comes from a random sample, we know that this 83% would be a statistic. Now, I'd like to give you a moment to try the next 3 examples on your own. It would be a good idea to pause the video for a moment and see if you can determine if the value given or described is a statistic or a parameter. After you have finished, unpause the video and let's see how you did. Okay, I hope you paused the video and worked on these next 3 examples. Let's see how we did. Of the 2,223 total passengers aboard the Titanic, 706 survived when it sank. In this description, notice that we are being described a proportion of people that survived of all of those on the Titanic. Because this value comes from all of the passengers aboard the Titanic, we know it would represent a parameter. Next example. The University of Chicago awarded 5,386 degrees in 2017, of which 42.2% were awarded to women. Would this 42.2% represent a parameter or a statistic? Because this value comes from all of the degrees awarded in 2017, we know it should represent a parameter. In a recent survey of 457 attendees of the movie Jumanji, 88% would recommend the movie to a friend. Would this 88% be a parameter or a statistic? Because this value comes from a recent survey, we know it would represent a statistic. Now, in this section, we are going to be interested in describing a population proportion. The symbol that we use to represent a population proportion is P. We are also going to be interested in looking at hypothesis tests, in which case we need to use a reference value for the parameter in our null hypothesis. We will refer to this reference value as your null value. Let's look at an example. A news article reported that Americans have differing views on potentially inconvenient and invasive practices that airports could implement to uncover potential terrorist attacks. The news piece was based on a survey of 656 randomly selected adults nationwide who were asked, "Do you think full-body digital X-ray machines to electronically screen passengers in airport security lines should be used at airports?" 563 answered yes. Do a majority of adults believe full-body scans should be used? First, let's identify the parameter of interest. We're being asked if we believe a majority of adults think full-body scans should be used. So the parameter of interest is going to be the proportion of adults that believe full-body scans should be used at airports. Recall, be explicit when defining your parameter of interest. Next, let's compute the statistic that will be used to estimate the true parameter. Here, we're talking about data that comes from a sample. So we will use p hat as our statistic. We know that 563 of the 656 surveyed believe we should use X-ray scanners. This is approximately 0.858. This is our statistic that we will use to estimate the parameter. Lastly, what is the null value that will be used to answer the research question? Remember, the null value is your reference value for the parameter. Here we're trying to determine if a majority of adults believe full body scans should be used. So here our parameter P will be 0.50. This about covers all the definitions and examples for section 2.4. If you have further questions, be sure to review the videos that follow or ask your instructor.